2,000 years ago, the Mediterranean world was locked under a rigid hierarchy. At the absolute top sat the Roman Empire and a network of client kings, projecting authority downward with absolute, unquestioned force. This flowchart illustrates how ancient empires monitored for instability. To them, threats came from very specific, visible vectors: rival aristocratic families amassing wealth, or foreign generals organizing armies. Controlling these specific nodes meant controlling history. Below them lay the decentralized peasant class, a population the empire lacked bandwidth to track, creating a massive gap in their security architecture. It was within this gap, on a quiet night in an obscure territory, that a child was born. Because his family possessed no wealth or military rank, his arrival triggered zero alarms in the imperial threat detection network. Even the local population living directly around him carried on with their daily routines, entirely unaware that the historical trajectory of the region had just shifted. This shift began in absolute silence, bypassing every alert the ancient world had designed to protect its own stability. Fast forward 3 decades, that undetected child emerges into the public sphere as an adult, completely bypassing the traditional pathways to political influence. Historical texts document him performing a series of actions that defied known physical laws, healing the sick with a touch and multiplying scarce food resources. Observers categorized these anomalies as miracles. By providing for the impoverished masses directly, he circumvented the established economic and political hierarchies. The people no longer needed to look up to the state for their basic well-being. They looked to him. This graph tracks how influence normally flowed through centralized hubs of state authority. But his following grew through a decentralized web of civilian followers that formed entirely outside official channels. Overturning physical laws allowed him to build an autonomous power base that the state could neither tax nor control. When the ruling class finally registered the scale of this uncontrolled social movement, their response was immediate panic. They recognized it as a sovereignty threat. In political science, a sovereignty threat occurs when a population pledges allegiance to a higher or external authority, which erodes the local ruler's claim to absolute power. His public message evolved from localized spiritual teachings into statements that questioned the moral authority of earthly kings and religious elites. To neutralize the threat, the state deployed its standard protocol for extreme dissidence: public condemnation followed by immediate, highly visible execution. The brutality of the execution was a calculated broadcast. The state needed to reassert the supremacy of earthly kings over any movement that claimed to answer to a higher power. In the immediate aftermath of his death, Roman authorities and client kings assumed the disruption was successfully contained. The leader was dead, and the movement was expected to dissolve. Then historical claims state that a few days later his sealed tomb was breached. Witnesses reported seeing him alive, moving freely through the region. The return from death removed the state's final leverage. When execution no longer signaled the end of a movement, the empire's primary method of enforcing obedience lost its utility. This timeline boundary chart shows the hard, finite limit of state power, a strict red line representing physical death. While the empire's authority stopped at this wall, the trajectory of this new movement crossed right through it. By removing the finality of death, he stripped the ancient empires of their ultimate deterrent, leaving their authority without its most potent tool. Today, the specific local magistrates and client kings who ordered his death are largely forgotten. Meanwhile, this single figure achieved enduring global recognition. Over the following centuries, the sprawling structure of the Roman Empire fractured and eventually collapsed. In inverse proportion, the geographic footprint of his legacy expanded across continents. He had challenged the laws of nature to build a following, the political hierarchy to challenge the state, and finally, death itself. This multi-tiered challenge is what connects the global reach of Jesus Christ back to his unnoticed origin in a dark, unmonitored corner of the empire. This history suggests that lasting influence does not require the permission of traditional authority. An enduring legacy can begin in total obscurity.